This is a numbers matching engine block here. I mean, it's no big deal. CTL suffix 72 352 barrel. I think it's like 165 horsepower. It's no kind of hot rod, but nonetheless, original motor. So this hobby requires a certain level of compulsion. Requires a certain level of addiction. And even though I'm working on something like this and I'm making things nice and pretty, things like this happen. And this is what happens. The phone rings, a buddy tells you there's a car for sale. You go look at it, you buy it. You don't like how it looks in the driveway, so you put up another garage here out of the Shelter Logic species. And you have plans to have a cool, fun little driver. And you possibly break it the first week you have it. Nothing fancy. 72, 352 barrel, VIN matching block. It's got a noise in it. We're gonna try to fill it with some thick stuff. I didn't buy it with the intention of putting a motor in the car. But another dead horse on the property I don't need. I mean, it runs okay. I think it's got a weak cam in it. But it, you know, I bought it and I drove it a half an hour home the day after I bought it, like I was in high school. It's kind of crazy. I spent a bunch of time cleaning the inside before I wanted to show you guys and blah, blah, blah. And now we got a noise. Let's drain the oil, see if there's metal in it. It's that kind of noise. I only did one burnout. And then we might collectively have a family meeting about doing a purge for 2025. There's too many cars on the property. I think that Mustang's on the chopping block. Can't let this stuff frustrate you, especially when it's self-inflicted, self-induced. This thing got me home a week ago, running fine. Well, not running fine, but running good enough to take a half an hour ride. What's happening now, which I'm pretty sure what we have going on here, is we have a motor on its way out. And maybe that long drive, for the first time in maybe 20 years, 10 years anyway, 10 years, we have a cam lobe or two going bad. This thing just wants to pop through the intake. And I had an old Chevy Nova years ago. I wiped the cam out, driving that thing like John Force, and that thing was sounding like a popcorn maker. And this is getting to be about that bad. It drove fine the other night. I took it to the car wash. I drove it around to get gas. You know, what do we have here? We have new plugs, new carburetor, recent tune-up. Motor's tired. Motor's original. I know the blue threw me off too. The intake and the valve covers, along with that air cleaner, made me think it was a, you know, more of a corporate blue later model motor. But I'm telling you right now, the VIN number is on that block. So whether somebody had the top end of this thing apart years and years ago, I mean, it is, you know, 52 years old. So here's what I think we're gonna do. I'm gonna stop wasting my time on it. I'm going to pull the plugs. We're going to do a good old-fashioned compression test. We're going to see if we got a cylinder or two or three down. We'll do a quick leak down test. And we'll see if we can just determine, for argument's sake, intake, exhaust, both, you know, losses. I'm assuming we have a couple burnt intake valves. Possibly. I don't hear any tapping, no valve train tapping, which tells me that, you know, the valve adjustment lash may have been done already to compensate the wiped out cam, or the lifters are pumping up and taking up that slack. You know, it's leaking oil everywhere. It's smoking. It's a real piece of you know what. But I guess I could say I had a week with it. Let me get back to work on Mr. Jones. I want to get the cross member ready to go and get that in the frame. And we're going to reconvene on this. Maybe when Big J stops by later. Me, Big J, and Uncle Bud Miller might convene and make a better plan. Plugs are out real easy on a Chevy small block with the factory manifolds. Every single one of these pig rich, real fat, and oily. So the gentleman I bought it from said we have good compression, and it ran like it had good compression. And I wasn't really hard on it. Always kind of had this, if you got on it too hard, it would pop through the intake, which made me suspect that it had a, weak intake valve or, wiped cam lobe or something. But if you really kind of rolled into it easy, it ran fine. The way it ran this morning, I wouldn't drive this thing into town, much less driving around to the car wash on a Friday night and drive it half an hour home, etc. So let's get a compression gauge on there, see what we have for compression, and then we'll just record those numbers right on the box. Boy, you hear that wind? Look at the trees blowing around here. Somewhat encouraging. Here's my compression numbers. 135, 125, 40, and 25. 140 and 125. That's driver's side. Passenger side, 140, 120, 140, 155 in the back. So obviously we're way away from the, 10% discrepancy. 155 would be 15 pounds. Should be somewhere between 155 and 140. We definitely have a 120. I have the throttle, locked open. And I think for argument's sake, we might do a leak down test on number 4. But I'm going to clean these plugs out. I don't know why this thing is running so terribly today, unless there's something up with that HEI. And I got weak spark, which would maybe explain why these things are just so freaking ugly. Only thing that has HEI here is that Le Mans. Everything else is still points, which I honestly prefer. Well, I cleaned them all up, sprayed them with brake clean. Each one full of oil. Completely full of oil. So compression rings are good, oil control rings could be bad, and I know this thing was smoking a lot on the way home. Tired old motor. I'm of the opinion the motor's never been out. Let's do this. John distracted me by showing me guys loading sheetrock or something in the back of a El Camino. Maybe he went and talked to the dude. Told him how famous we are and how we own the El Camino market around here. So let's put the plugs in it and see if we have a better running freaking car here. Otherwise, I broke it. Okay, here we are. How do we do? Put the plugs back in it. It runs much better. Oil-fouled plugs. Took it down the road, right across the street there, little neighborhood we live in. It broke down. Pushed it back here. Nice neighbor said, Andy, need a hand? And I said, no, don't help me. This is the only way I learn. You got to let me suffer. So I thought it ran out of gas, and in effect what happened was, remember I told you I don't like HEI? Well, I did unplug the distributor, the harness, from the base plate to the cap when I was cranking it over. And those wires are just a little compromised. So a little bit of wiggle of a wire and fired right up. So I've been messing with the mixture screws and I've been messing with the accelerator pump rod on this stupid 2-barrel. It's not stupid, it's fine. I was playing around with the length of that rod, so to get a better pump shot, accelerated pump shot. And really, oh boy, I'm covering the screen. Really, what it likes is, instead of extending the rod so that the accelerator pump is down the plunger, giving it a quicker shot, it likes the rod to be more like a V, bent. In effect, making the A to B distances between the linkages shorter, bringing the accelerator pump plunger higher up in the channel, giving it a longer pump shot. That's what it likes better. It didn't like a little bit of timing advance. I took the timing back a little bit. Seems like the popping through the intake is better. I can't really get on this thing because it's got broken engine mounts or driver's side mount, and I ordered mounts on eBay, and it clearly says, Chevelle, El Camino, blah, 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 V8, and clearly what I got were mounts for a straight six. So they're back in the box, going back. I just got to baby it around. But the other good news is that it's not really knocking so bad. So I think I'm going to brave it and take it for a little errand for some celebratory libations, as they say. Got a slow driver here checking out my El Camino. Okay, let's see how we fare on a quick errand here. I was confident in this car until this morning, where kind of the wheels started coming off. All right, let's see how it goes. This is what you can't do with the OG. Can't do it with the convertible. Can't do it with the Le Mans. Really can't even do it with the Mustang. Got to be able to do stuff. It's cool stuff. It ran okay on the way here. Little by little, I'll make it mine. Doing all kinds of stuff around here. Another weekend blown working on these pieces of junk. I'd say I got this old girl running a little bit better. And really what it boils down to is that silly accelerator pump rod. It's got to be adjusted just right. And, if the hole in the accelerator linkage or the accelerator pump armature there, if they're eroded, as you crack the throttle, that rod can slap kind of left and right. So I had to kind of put a spacer in there and all kinds of silly stuff. And I just want to get rid of that lean pop through the intake. I did a compression test like I showed you. We have between 150 and 120 pounds of compression. Not great on the low side. It's okay. Plugs were oil soaked. We spoke about that yesterday. But with a little bit of tweaking and tuning and, making sure the accelerator cable bracket isn't slopping around and adjusting the idle mixture screws with a vacuum gauge, getting them even. Right now it's just between a turn and a half and a turn and 3/4 is really where it wants to be. 15 inches of vacuum, it's like 14 or so, is really the best vacuum I can get out of it right now. It doesn't like advanced timing. There's a low compression, tired old 2-barrel motor. But it can do that now. I mean, you got to power brake it. Look, my 72 Cutlass 350 2-barrel open rear would smoke the right rear tire a long time. Way more than this without power braking it. But look, this is better. The other day, maybe yesterday, I couldn't even get out of my neighborhood. So, you start freaking out thinking, we got to put a motor in it. We got to do all this kind of crazy stuff. It probably needs engine, parts. I don't know. I can hold it to the floor now and rev it up and then go down the road without it falling on its face. I guess getting oil out of the spark plugs certainly helps. So, all right, I don't even know what place this holds in our lives right now, but a pretty significant one. We have a shelter for it. Okay, maybe I'll drive it to work. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Maybe I'll blow it up and we'll, I don't know, put a Honda motor in it or something. I don't know what to tell you. But, all right, that's enough. It does leak oil. It's making a mess all over the driveway. Burnout marks are cool. Oil stains are not. But let's see. Oh, beautiful El Camino. Got all my tools in the back. Let's see what this thing does after a hard drive down the road and a burnout in the driveway. Seems to run okay. Yep. At some point, you gotta say the enemy of good is better, right? We're good. All's well in the world. Yeah, I know it's cold. It's really cold. But let's try to make this errand a little fun or completely disastrous. Let's take a 72L Camino that needs everything under the sun out on a 30-degree morning to go buy a couple captured nuts. I see no serious signs of fluids underneath it, so well, let's see if it starts first. Yes, sir. Okay, here we go. Gonna do the old cranky crank. Sounds pretty good, right? Couple pumps of the juice. Ooh, hasn't been started in a couple weeks. Oh man. Yeah. That is a smooth rudder, man. Just let it idle in here until it overheats, and then I'll have some heat. Broken motor mount and all. Sweet. Yeah, it's outside. It's running. It's idling. The very good news is that it doesn't drip any fluid when it's sitting. It only pours oil out while it's running. So that's good. That's only half the problem. We're gonna let this warm up a whole bunch because it's got no heat. We'll just go to True Value. All right, leaving the local hardware store. Skidmark was a big hit. Everybody loves Skidmark. Handed out a couple business cards even, that's cool. Well, all right. Let's get back home. I'm gonna tell you, just like all the other cars, a little cold weather, they run great once they're warmed up. But this one, so far so good. I mean, I'm almost home. Hardware store, gas station, and home. It turns out that the speedometer is pretty accurate because I went through one of those, town radars, and it turns out that it's pretty accurate. So I'm thinking that the odometer is accurate. I'm gonna record that and get back to you. I'll take the long way back. Zero issues. I can say it because I'm home. Started up. Drove to the hardware store, drove from the hardware store to the gas station to home. What's the problem? It's a car. It did its job just fine.